Okay, I just want to start. We basically finished Pay Ches and Pay Test last time, but going over everything again, it was clear to me that that I could add a few things here, and that's what I plan to do, Blineda. Okay. First of all, um, the Rambam in Shirish Yud Beis sets up a general principle that all the mitzvahs that was said on all korbanos are separate mitzvahs and not part of the Maisa Chatos, the Maisa Oilo, the Maisa Oshom, and the Maisa Shlom. And one of the examples he says, Umiyomash is Mechus Zman, Miyomash Shmini Bohola, and the other is Melicha, and the lav of not doing melicha, and then he ends with savoise lecho mashiach imenu shekol echod me'elu hatzivuyim hi mitzvah bifnei atzmo ki heim ein mehem gam echod chelke mechelke mitzvah mikol melochas hakorban meyuchad avot tzivuyim kolim kol korban. Okay, so the general klal is that the Maisa Korban, a Maisa HaKorban, that was said in all Chugei HaKorbanos, are not if it's in the korban, a din in this korban particularly, or not in all korbanos, it's a chilaf from the Maisa korban. But if it's a din in all korbanos, then it's a separate mitzvah. So that l'chayra is what we have. Okay. So the question is then, why is it that the korban mincha is a separate mitzvah? L'chayra, the korban mitzvah and mitzvah peiches and peites should be really two mitzvahs, not one mitzvah. I mean, it should be one mitzvah, not two mitzvahs. Excuse me. The mitzvah of achilas hakorban. So, right? It's not. Or look the opposite. Look at the opposite way. Maybe say that the achilas hamincha should be part of the mitzvah of the Maisa Mincha, mitzvah Samach Zayin. Okay, so why is it a separate mitzvah? So it is true. Okay, it is true. No, excuse me. It is true that we use the word mitzvah in the Sefer, that it's not a heter, okay? But interesting, the more important question the Ram doesn't point out, but he's also using it for, because once the Sefer calls it a mitzvah, not only it's not a heter, but the same way Yibum is a separate mitzvah, Mincha is a separate mitzvah. So, hey, hey, it's only a din in the Ma'aseh Mincha, the Achila. And L'chayra, Oto State, it says explicitly in Sherish Yud Beis that the Seder from the Ma'aseh Mincha is one mitzvah. And the Achila from the Mincha, it should be part of the mitzvah's Mincha. How can it be a separate mitzvah? See, you could talk about a Achilas korban and make it all korbanos, and then you can have a discussion, and that's what he said the Shurish Beis, that it's all a korbanos, okay? But the Achilas Mincha is not in all korbanos. It's part of the Seder Mincha. So it should have been part of the Ma'aseh Mincha, not a separate mitzvah. So what comes out is as equal or as yesodistic that the shloshim are. If the matiki ashmur controvert them, they disappear. So since it says ma'aseh, since it says mitzvah, and the Sefer compares the mitzvah's yibum to the mitzvah's achilas mincha, so it's a mitzvah minyan mitzvahs. We find the similar thing in mitzvah pei beis, which we had already. The Ram says in mitzvah pei beis, v'yesh l'makshe sheyakshe v'yoyme v'lo manisa pedusay v'arifasay, the pidyon petach hamor and the arif v'shtei mitzvahs v'lo manisa oison mitzvah achas v'ti arifasay midini mitzvah k'moy shekiblu b'sherish the two separate permutations of what's done in a Yovam. Either a Yavama, either there's Yibum or there's Chalitza, or it should be, or the two separate permutations in Petach Hamor. Either there's Pidyon or Arif or Pidyon. Hine Yodea Hakel Ki Hekesh Mechayiv Zeh. This, the Hekesh is logic. So it means that the logic, it's very strange. The Shurashim are based, I'm not getting involved in this because, I'm not sure. The Arabic is a separate word for reasoning and understanding and analysis, and that he uses when he's talking about Midas HaTorah or when he's talking about reasoning over here, and he uses a word that reasoning and thought and the rational approach should be mechayiv such a thing, or whatever it is. The shloshim are mechayiv that. In other words, it seems the shloshim kilu. At least this is not a kabbalah, but any person who has his head screwed on straight should say this. That's what he seems to be saying, because he's referring. He says shekiblu b'shur. He says kamoy shekiblu. B'shur shlishi shvi'i hine yodea kel. I mean, yodea kel means it's anyone. It's a tmiya. She ha hekesh, not the midas hekesh. It's the intellectual prowess. It's not the Ram used the word hekesh, or not the Ram. The Arabic translators of the Middle Ages use the word hekesh for intellectual prowess or something, or some type of reasoning, okay? Mechayiv zeh lulei mashe motzinu lavosenu loshon yore al zeh heyoisim shtei mitzvahs. Although the Matiki Ashmur said no. In this case, it's not so. V'uamrei mitzvahs pedia kodemis lemitzvahs arifa, umitzvahs yibum kodemis lemitzvahs chalitza, ukmo shayevom muchenes im leyibum im lechalitza, vayibum mitzvah v'chalitza mitzvah, even though logically it should be one mitzvah. Kain Petachamo, Roy, Ol Lipidia, Ol Arif, and logically it should be one mitzvah. But the Matiki Ashmur, B'chol Echad V'Echad, mitzvah K'moshe Ma'amalnu, because the Matiki Ashmur, they override the reasoning, and we don't know. You have to know whether the shloshim are reasoning that we have to know what exactly happened. But the Matiki Ashmur said that it doesn't apply over here. Okay. That is, and the amazing thing is that, which in our opinion, that Yibum should have been a heta, which the Teres Kohanim is dealing with, seems to be the main thrust of what he's talking about, in that Achilas HaMincha should have been a heta, okay? And that's the main thrust of what we're talking about. It should not have even been part of the Ma'aseh Mincha, because it's only a heta. Okay, Kamash Mo'anein, it's a mitzvah. But not only is it not part, so the Shiva of Ma'aseh Mincha, and he doesn't talk about the second part. It's a separate mitzvah. Next, okay, that's one point I wanted to add over here, which I think is an important point. Point number 2. The Rambam has 3 separate mitzvahs of menachos, or something which is a mincha, besides the mitzvah of Samach Zayin, which is a mitzvah. The Rambam has a mitzvah say Alechem upon him. The Rambam has a mitzvah say Alechem upon him is also a mincha. And the Rambam has a mitzvah say of Shtei Alechem. And the Rambam has a mitzvah say of Minchas Oimeh. So interesting. In Minchas Oimeh, the Rambam doesn't talk about Achila, as you would have assumed, because it's over here. But in Shtei Alechem and Alechem upon him, he talks about the Achila there, which is very interesting. So the answer, I think, is very simple, because in Lechem Aponim, in Emor, the Torah talks about Achilas Lechem Aponim. So it means Achilas Lechem Aponim is part of the Seder HaMincha, of the Seder of, it's not a Mincha, the Seder of Lechem Aponim. In Shtei Alechem, the Torah talks about Lashem LaKoyin, which means the Koyin gets it for Achila. So it means the Achila is also part of the Shtei Alechem. In Minchas HaOmer, there's no discussion of Achila. The Achila of Minchas HaOmer is the Achila of Poshet HaMenachos. And it's part of this mitzvah over here that we're talking about Peiches. And everything is very simple. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, next. I assume, and maybe I'm wrong, that the Achila, but it's not negate anything. It's only, you'd say it's sophistry, but I don't think it is. But whatever it is, I assume it's a double portion. Then when you eat the Lechem upon him, and you eat the Shtei Alechem, you makayim 2 mitzvahs. There's the mitzvah of the Seder of Lechem upon him in Shtei Alechem, and there's also the mitzvah of Achilas Mincha. It's not the fact that it's Kilu Yotzim in a cloud, and it's not a Kiyum of Achilas Mincha. I think it's a little portion. But, there's no way to be proving one way or the other. Okay? Next. Unless you tell me on Chalke Mitzvah there's no bracha, and only on the Achila is a bracha, so it might be enough. I'm not getting involved in that. I'm not getting involved in whether there's a bracha on each chelik from the avodah. That's not nishta hin, nishta her for me. Okay, next. Now, Mitzvah Peites. That was point 1. Mitzvah Peites. Mitzvah Peites, we developed many principles. The Ram talks about, let's just go over again. The Ram talks about a mitzvah of Achilas Kohanim HaMechaperes. Okay, and he talks about koche kochim, and really the issue is not koch. And he says chatas and osham, and he says shehem kochim. Okay, kloima. He says kohanim lecho bosa kochim, kloima chatas v'osham shehem koche kochim. Okay, here this is very odd. Okay, because the koche kochim is not the issue over here. The issue is achila mechaperes, and shtei alechem is also not included in this. So you don't know what he makes the big deal and the ra about koche kochim. Okay, maybe because he wants to include later kochim kalim in the mitzvah or truma, whatever it is. But the mitzvah is achila mechaperes. Now, point one, this is amazing because the Rambam talks about this mitzvah as achilas kohanim. Rashi, based on the Tzulim Psochim, says that it's achilas bailim. Rashi, Nun Testament Aleph, B'shayimos Hashono, Tichsiv v'ochlos m'shekubo b'hem, almo achilas kochim asehi bein hanecholim l'kohanim hanecholim Yisrael. That's good. We're going to, it will come later, I hope, to the Ramban, Blineder. The Ramban learns it's a different mitzvah. In the Aseh Shechar Harav, Aseh Aleph, we'll see, okay? But comes the Rambam and says, no. Not Misyachas in the moment Psochim. It says the mitzvah is Achilas Kohanim. There is, and then I don't want to get involved with this now. There is a broch on Achilas HaZevach. The question is what that means exactly. And it's not Achilas Kohanim. On Chagigas Yudalad. So the embassy is there's a kiyum of necha because when achilaso is mu'it, you have to the achilaso meruba, so you have to bring the chagigas yudalid in order to pass be necha aseva. So there's a kiyum, but that's an interesting thing. For that kiyum make a bracha. It's not that it's a achila. There's a mitzvah. It's very strange. Okay, next. The Ram quotes in this mitzvah two psukim. He quotes the mitzvah. He quotes the pasuk v'ochos shekupo b'hem, which happens to be by miluyim, and we'll see later. Should have been a hoashah, not a mitzvah deres. And he quotes the pasuk. He quotes a sifra. In Shmini, minayin shachilas kochim kapora al kol Yisrael. Again, kapora, achilas kochim kapora kol Yisrael. It's the achila from Sirosh Chodesh. Tamaloima. V'oisa nosan lochem lo seis es avoino eida lechape aleichem b'fnei Hashem. So it's the Teichoch of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? It's not a question of mitzvah. God gave. So you see that it's a machape. The achila is a machape. Hoketzad hakoinim oichlim v'Yisraelim miskaplim. The koinim eat from the Sirosh Chodesh and Yisraelim miskaplim. Now, let's go slowly. So first of all, we ask, this is Doch by Miluyim. The first puzzle also shekupo b'hem. In Shiur Shlishi, Miluyim, Shiur Shlishi, the same way Miluyim, he says Miluyim on that part of Minyan HaMitzvah, so this also shouldn't be. In Miluyim, Moshe was Makriv, and the Achilas Kohanim were born him with Teras, the Baal HaKorban. and they were not the Kohanim Makrivim in the Miluyim. So how can you learn a mitzvah achilas Kohanim, machilas Baalei HaKorban in Miluyim? Aaron Abonim with a Baalei HaKorban. There you see Chidush Agriz in Siman Mem Daled. Next, according to the Rambam, you only learn achilas chatas and ashomis from this pasuk, right? But the achila miluyim was achilas shlomim, and not achilas chatas v'osham. V'yochel es shekubu v'hem, and the hemshech pasuk v'yochel al nebonov es b'sar ha'ayil v'es halechem asher basor pesach moed. So according to this, the was said on the Miluyim of Shlomim, and not a Chatas Osham. So how do you learn Achilas Chatas Osham Me'achilas Shlomim? Another question, okay? Just one at a time. Another question. Bilam says in the beginning of the mitzvah, he should see va kohanim lechol b'sar kochim kloima hachatas v'oshim shein kochei hakodoshim. V'omer v'ochol yisrael shekumo v'loshin sifra. We read the sifra is on v'ya oisa nosa lochem loseis is avuno eda in kohanim olchem b'al miskap mesiu ish chodesh. The Rambam learns the mitzvah v'ochol shekumo v'hem and quotes the sifra that is interpreting a different pasuk. So what's a ton? You know, it's nice bekiyas from a sifra, but what does it do with the mitzvah? Okay. So l'chera, Chazal learned from Pashas Miluyim. There could be mitzvah l'deiros, because if the mitzvah miluyim is not logically tied to chinuch hakohanim or chinuch hamishkan, it could be l'deiros. It just happened to be said in the Mishkan. There's no halacha that something which was said in the Mishkan is l'shah, and you have to evaluate each one on its own merits. So the Rambam. Therefore, the Gemara in Psachim on Nun Tesama Beis learned the mitzvah zu mi pashas miluyim. You look at Nun Tesama Beis in Psachim, even though it a pure is a mitzvah l'shah, but the ochos shekuba behem is not limited. It just happened to be a shekuba behem then, but it's a mitzvah l'deis. The Isa Zaris in Koche Kochim, the Gemara Makis Naf Yud Ches, is learned from that same Pasha Miluyim. It just logically the Isa of Achilles Zohar and Koche Kochim has nothing to do with Mishkan and Horashah. It's a din l'dei. So this also that kasha that happened to be said in Miluyim is not a reason to make it a mitzvah l'shah. That I think is no portion. But however, in the Pashas Miluyim, it's only talking about Achilas Ela Miluyim, which happened to be Achila Machaperes, because it says V'ochol Asher Kupa Bohem, right? V'ochol Isom Asher Kupa Bohem. It says Mefurish it's a kapara. It happened to be a kapara, which happened to be the Shah, but there is a kapara. We don't know from the Pasha Miluyim there's such a thing as Achila HaMechaperes L'Deres. Maybe that itself was a Shah. In Mimela, it's a mitzvah l'shah. comes the Sifra, and that the idea of Achila Machaperes exists l'deiros. V'oiso nosan lochem l'chape aleida. And that's what the Rambam wants to prove that it's not a Rosh, but it's a mitzvah. But there is an inyan l'deiros. Once an inyan l'deiros, that's a mitzvah. See, the only reason why it's a mitzvah l'shah because it's limited to Mishkan. Once you tell me this concept is not limited to Mishkan, so in Mela, it's a mitzvah l'deiros.
So the pasuk in Shmini is Megale. What that the pasuk
is Megale that the idea of Achila. You see. That the Miluim was Machape and Nicha, but it says Asher Kupa Behem. There's doch a whole mitzvah from Mechila Machaperes. So maybe that's only the whole idea of Mechila Machaperes. Maybe it's only the Shah. Maybe it was only then. So comes the Sifra, he quotes, and he says that, he seems though, if there is such a concept, you don't have to prove anything. I might have said differently, but that's what I'm doing. Since there's such a concept of Achila Machaperes l'deiros, so what? So Mela, it's a minyan mitzvahs. That's what he quotes the Sifra for. And Memela, that's only by us. What about Hashem? What about Hashem? So since it says, Kol zocha b'kohanim yochel b'mochen kodesh yochal kodesh hakodoshim hu kachatas ko'oshem teir achas lohem hakoyin asher yichper boy lo yihye in Vayikra Zion. So you know that Oshem also has Achila Machaperes and Shalom Yisrael, and the mitzvah is Chatas and Oshem. So even though Aaron Ubonov were the Baalei HaKorban and not the Makrivi HaKorban, and even though the Korban was Shlomim, but the Achila was not an Achila. The din is not that the Makrivim, you needed Achila Machaperes. And they ate it, and Taka was the Achila Machaperes. The Deiles, it happens to be the Kohen Makrivim. In the time of Mishkan, it happened to be the Baalei HaKorban. And that's the way the Ram would learn. Next. Now, good. Next. Now, the Rambam has an interesting word over here, and I'm just skipping a little bit. Onam shar kochim, kloima kochim kalim, hinehem yochlu. I don't know what kochim that are not machpe. I don't know why, what the ichus over here is, and why he gets, that's not for me now, but that's what he does. Hinehem not, yes, and there happens to be Taida, which is the Yom B'Layla, which is not, which is even though it's Yom B'Layla, even though it's Yom B'Layla, like Kochim, no, it's still Kochim Kalin upset. He's going, he brings this in and he has kilos about it, and what's can we say that? I'm not getting involved in that. V'Av Shehem. Kochim kalim v'tochlen anoshim gam kein elu ha-kochim kalim v'achilosam gam kein hi nigreres acher ha-mitzvah. Okay? Now, let's just get involved over here. The Rambam, we will have to talk. The word nigreres is a very odd thing, okay? What does it mean, nigreres? Okay? So you tell me The Ram uses it in other places in Sefer HaMitzvos. And I'll tell you no. And you'll see why. Okay? Then we get to the Arabic. Okay, but let's just get slowly. Okay. Let's get slowly, and then we'll get that. We'll see. We'll try to get this up. Okay. Okay. First, like this. The Rambam in Hilchos Ma'aseh Korbanos Perek Yud Halacha Aleph goes like this. Achilas hachatos v'osham mitzvahs aseh shenema v'ochlu oisom asher kupa bohem. HaKohanim oichlim u'bailim miskaprim. If I stop there, everything will be good. V'hu hadin l'shar hakochim she'oichlim HaKohanim she'achilos ha-mitzvah. How can it be hu hadin? It don't make no sense. Hu hadin? It's a very odd phrase. Hu hadin is almost like an equation. We understand what happened. So there's in the beginning, he talks about Achilim HaChaperes. And afterwards, he talks about Stam Achilas Kohanim. I have to understand what happened, okay? But who I did? Now, I just want to have various translations over here. So in Ibn Tibbon, V'achilosam gam kein hi nigres acha mitzvah. And similarly in Kapach, v'gam achilosam nigres la mitzvah. So if you have Kapach and you have Ibn Tibbon, so you think you're happy, okay? Let me read to Ibn Ayub. Ibn Ayub says, V'achilosam gam kein mechuyove ha-mitzvah. What's ha-mitzvah? What's the Hayidiyah? What's he talking about? Mechuyove ha-mitzvah. Isn't that an interesting fraction? Interesting phrase? Mechuyove ha-mitzvah? And he translates the same way later on in this mitzvah also. Okay. The Rambam uses the word nigreres, at least the way Ibn Tibbon translates it, okay? Also in mitzvah, in the mitzvah's Korban Pesach, in Nun Vav, of Achilas Mora, Tfeila, le mitzvah Achilas Korban Pesach. Okay? There, the interpretation of the word nigreres, l'chera, is Tfeila. The Mora is a kiyum in the mitzvah Achilas Pesach. But it's not a separate mitzvah or a separate kiyum. In Targum Kapach, there, he says Tfeila. Okay? And it doesn't say nigreres. But whatever it is, nigreres, that over there, the Pirish is not that, nigreres means that it's like a tefillah, l'chayra. And it's, here, the Rambam uses a different Arabic word, milchak, okay? And the literal interpretation is like mechuba or nidbak. It's connected to the mitzvah. And that's kavona of nigreres. It's not a kavona of tefillah, okay? Once we have this, we begin to talk about things. Because, you see, the question the one has to ask themselves when they're over here, you look at this and you say the mitzvah, Rabba Hashem Hashem, why is the Rambam and he's running to Achilas Truma to make Kochim Kalim of Kohanim mitzvah? What the heck? What does it have to do with with anything. It's like, you know, the Rambam went off and took a spaceship to outer space. It has nothing to do with anything. Why is the Rambam getting involved over here? First of all, what does he want? Yeah, so you say it's true. It's the Kuti Dis Emes, but that's not the purpose of Sefer HaMitzvos. Sefer HaMitzvos tell you it's the HaMitzvah here. So what does it have to do with anything? The Rambam means, and this is the only place, the word nigreres over here, or the word michuivi mitzvah, it's a tesefetz, it's an add-on to the mitzvah. It's nidbak, it's mechuba, it's mechiyuvi mitzvah. And that's what's going on over here. And this is the only place that's the Rambam's opinion. So the question only is, what does it mean that it's nigreres? What's the huadin? The Rambam and the huadin is mashmis tachanat and the mitzvah. Even though it's not achila mit chaperes, it's part of this mitzvah. It's an amazing thing. And that is clear. Im ayov v'achilosam gam kein michuyovei hamitzvah. That the achilas chozer v'shoik is also nichlelis, is also included in this mitzvah. And they're both part of the mitzvah. But interesting, this whole idea of nivreres and nidbak, there's no source in the pasuk. V'ochlos behen is only achila machaperes. V'ata nosan lochem loseis es avoino eda lechape aleichem lefnei Hashem is also only in chatos by Rosh Chodesh. Or, you know, we apply it to Hashem. It's only achila machaperes. So the old source that there's a mitzvah or part nidbak to this mitzvah or mechuyovei mitzvah is only the Sifri of avodas matona etenis kunaschem lasses achilles kochem megvulim kavodas mikdash v'mikdash ma avodas mikdash v'mikdash mekadosh yodo v'achkach oived af achilles kochem megvulim mekadosh yodo v'achkach oichel. So ein hochinami that this is learned from Midrash's Chazal achilles tchuma begvulim. And we learned since Achilles Chum Begvulim, certainly Achilles Kochim Kalim. We still have to understand how it's nigreres. What does it have to do with anything? This l'chayla should be a separate mitzvah. There's Achila Mechaperes and there's Achilles Kohanim of Truma and Kochim and other cases. With this drasha, whatever it is. But this drasha wouldn't have been in Minyan HaMitzvos. It's doch Shiur Sheni that you don't have drashas in Minyan HaMitzvos. So what happened over here? So is an amazing thing. Achilas. Kohanim, or the Achilles mitzvah of Kohanim and Kochim is different than all of the mitzvahs in the minyan. And all the mitzvahs in the minyan, there's a pasuk that you learn the mitzvah. And here, from a droshes called Psukim, that through somehow these psukim, the drushes, we're making the mitzvah a much larger to include other things. In Achilas Kochim, there are two separate Mekoros for the mitzvah. The psukim mufurashim, that there's a mitzvah of kapora, achil mechaperes, and we have this drashas chazal that l'cheira is not shaykh to any psukim, and there's a mitzvah of machila, kochim and kol kochim, and kohanim, and afil truma. So the mitzvah is a composite of psukim and drasha. And the Rambam seems to, we put them together. It's an amazing thing to be one law mitzvah who adin, and then we're expanding the mitzvahs through this drasha. And then an amazing thing happens. This is the most amazing thing. According to Shiur Yud Beis, if you look at Achilas Chatas and Osham as an isolated phenomenon, one would have said it's part of the mitzvah of Chatas and Osham, even though it's two karbonos and not a mitzvah in Minyan HaMitzvos. How do I know that? Because the Ram counts Nesachim as part of Ma'aser Olah, even though it's also in Shlomim, and it's in two karbonos, and it's part of the Seder, the Ma'aser. There's no separate mitzvah of Nesachim. Nesachim are part of the mitzvah of Olah, and I assume Shlomim also. And here you would have said it's part of Chatas and Osham. Why is it a separate mitzvah in Minyan HaMitzvos? And the Rambam says in Shiur Yud Beis that it's knowing in all mitzvahs, knowing all korbanos. So the Rambam did an amazing thing with this drush. He's not stam plopping chas v'sholom, they're telling you Torah and Truma and this and that. What he's doing is without this, it wouldn't be in the Minyan HaMitzvos. Because the only reason it means mitzvah is because it applies to Truma. Oh. And by applying to Truma, it applies to Kochim Kalim. And it applies to Kochim Kalim, it applies to Chatzos Osham. And it's in all Korbanos. And Derech Hagav, or even Shtei Lechem also. But Shtei Lechem, not B'teres Achilim Mechaperes, B'teres the Kal V'choy from Truma. And with that, it's a separate now only, and that's the Ram. There's no stira. There's no stira between Shiur Yud Beis and over here. It's all the same thing. He just hasn't explained, never explained in Shiur Yud Beis how it's knowing kol korbanos. And here he starts it in a very strange way. He says, it shouldn't have been a separate mitzvah. So the answer is no, because of the delicious knowing kol korbanos, achilas kohanim, and shalom Yisrael. Okay. Next. That I thought, is a very important addition, and the Lulei B'Shil Davar Zeh, there was kedai to go over the whole thing. Because now it makes sense. It just didn't. You see, the problem is sometimes, but the truth is, I had the feeling, that this nigrer is something special. Then I saw the different Arabic word than by Moro. Okay, so they said, what? Baruch Hashem. But then when I saw Ibn Ayyub, mitzvah, it's very clear that it's part of this mitzvah, and that you have also Mishnah Torah, Vuadin. And once you have that, that's what I'm saying. It's called a kabbalas memela. Then it's a separate mitzvah, Minyan HaMitzvos.
So by Moror, it's better that says tafel and not nigrar.
Right. And
Right.
That's Kapach's
Right.
translation.
Yeah. So I don't know what to say, but Reb Chaim Heller writes Nigrar.
So,
So that's yeah.
David, I want to just share something here.
Yeah.
There's no Rab Chaim Heller. Rab Chaim Heller is Ibn Tibbet. That's all he did. He
Okay.
copied Ibn Tibbet. And Ibn
Okay.
Tibbet, I told you, I pointed out
Yeah.
the translation, but it's
Yeah.
two different Arabic words. And I just say, if the
Yeah.
Ram used two different Arabic words, and he
And two
had
different.
a different idea.
No, I understand. Yeah.
That's not scholarship. That's and
Yeah.
I'll tell you something else. Ibn Ayev translated the Rambam before Ibn Tibbet.
Yeah.
Okay. And the Yoidei Dova claim, and I'll just leave it for that, and I'm not going to comment on it, that Ibn Tibbon had better mercantile ties, and therefore his translation was used, and not Ibn Ayev. And it is very possible Ibn Ayev's translation was better.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Adkan. Okay? The Chaim Heller does it's Ibn Tibbon. Okay? Now, next. So once you have that, that's the whole drasha, that this and the truma and the whole thing, and the bracha and truma, achilas truma, and it's an avodah and a kiyum and das. All this is order to say there's achid that it's one mitzvah, achilas kohanim. And even achilas kohanim, which nothing to do with Tolbun, that's what makes it. That's truma. It's an amazing thing. Okay, next. Now mitzvah tzaddik. Mitzvah atishim. He shetzivonu lisroif kochim shenitma'u. To burn kochim that became tomei. The sreif is a mitzvah. Wo amroi והבוסה שהיגה בכל תומי לא יהיה אוכל בלי שישרף. Now, so a priori it says b'ei shisoref. Just let's drum it up a little bit. It says b'ei shisoref. So the Ram should have stopped now, right? The Ram works very hard over here. And also in the next mitzvah, which a priori there's a tzibur over here, to prove that it's a mitzvah minyan mitzvahs. And what does he do? Ubegmor Shabbos, it's Gmor Shabbos with the Gmor of Shabbos. That's it's a possessive. Ubegmor Shabbos, bo'u levayer hatam, she ba'avuroi, also lahadlik, b'shem and truma shenitma b'yontif. Why is it also? The Omroi b'zeh shaboson asehu v'yontif aseh v'lois aseh v'yein aseh doicha lois aseh v'aseh. And from that you can prove there's a mitzvah over here. V'inyan zeh ha'maimo Sasias Meleches Melacha B'Yontif also V'oisa oive al mitzvahs say. So he's proving, he's just catching up. This is so important. He has to explain what the proof is. What's the asay? There's an asay B'Yontif? Shuhu Bittul mitzvah say some of those malacha yontif is a vatal asay. V'amroi bayoimash b'yontif v'hoya lochem shabbosan. That's the asay. V'oive al mitzvahs lois asay. Ki also mashihuza b'menu. So the person does malacha. Mamash a whole diatribe just to explain this Gemara, which is very important. Somehow, we need to prove there's a mitzvah over here. V'amrai kol malacha lo ya'asa b'hem. Kloima b'yontif there's a lav of Melocha and Yotiv. Usreifus Kochim Tmeim, Omnom, he, Mitzaseh, Lekach, and Usreifus Kochim includes also Truma. Right? Because that's what the Gemara is talking about. Lekach Eino Mutter, Lisref Oisei B'Yontif. Ba'avu HaSherish, Shezocho, Ein Aseh, Toicha Lois Aseh V'Aseh. And now, a separate Raya, another Raya, V'shom Omru Gamkein, V'shom Gamkein Omru, Mai Mazeh L'shoinoi. Keshem Shemitzvah Lisref Kochim, Shenitmo, Kach Mitzvah Lisref Shem Truma Shenitmo. It's a mitzvah, and it's like a shame. And Schreifus Truma Tmeya is part of this mitzvah. Ukva Isbayu Dine Mitzvah Zo, B'psochim B'seif Tmur. Let me just show you a similar thing, and then we'll quote it. Similar thing, look, Sadi Aleph. HaMitzvah Chas V'chtishim, He Shezimor Lisref Noisa. Wom Yis'aleh, V'noisa, Mibisar HaZevach, V'yom HaShlishi, B'eish Yisoif. Sach Mafush HaMitzvah. So he needs, Ubebei Omu, the Matiki Ashmua, Ubebei Omu, Be'omu Yis'al, Be'omroi Yis'al, Be'omru, Be'omro Yis'al, Be'keves HaPesach. You have to look at different psukim. This pasuk is Vayikra. There's a pasuk Keves HaPesach. Wo siu meno ad boike. V'anoi siu meno ad boike b'eish yis tischroifo. Omru. B'mechilta, or the Matiki Ashmu said in Mechilta, Bo HaKosev litein aseh alois aseh. Mefush Matiki Ashmu, the mitzvah say over here. What do you need it for? It says Beishi Saif. Umakoy Misrabim, Bipsochim, Umakis, Vizulos, another proof. Omu, Bebeya, Kilab, the Noisa, Lachid the Glasay, Glasay. Well, Chene ain't like it all. We're not interested when he gets Malchus, and that's all I'm going to say. There's an Aseh over here. The Aseh who, Ma, Shezochalnu, V'anoise mimenu ad boike b'eish tisreifu. Okay, and that's the Ram works very hard. That there's doch a in both cases he's trying to move as a mitzvah, even though a priori, if he would have presented it without that, no one would have said a peep. Then a side point, then people did noisar is echol. We're not interested in that now. Milo is a Milo, whatever. In Mitzvah Hashem will pick this up, but this is the context of Mitzvah Hashem for next week. Shabbat Tzlach Have a nice week.